It was never that. It was not to keep someone from eating chicken or beef or whatever. And if you are a vegetarian or a vegan, more power to you. I wish I was. I've tried at different times. My children, however, love chicken nuggets, and they're always around, you know. So this is what I always say is like, here's the point. Like Luke Jackson, that character I just read, how he's talking about his factory. Dude's like upper middle class Arkansas. Like, got a good house, got a beautiful young family. He's got whatever he needs to survive and be happy. And his sin, his original sin, the thing that pushes this whole novel to a inflection point, is that he wants more. He just wants more. And so that's the problem with the chicken processing industry. That's the problem not only with the chicken processing industry, but the industry that is created by like farming soybeans, you know, and the land that gets moved and pushed away, and the sort of animals that are have to get mowed down and taken out to make more room, to make more soybeans so that vegetarians can eat these. And so I'm not saying anything's wrong with either one of your lifestyle choices. I'm saying what's wrong is how we as a country, like, it's not like, okay, we're making millions, but let's make billions. That's the problem. And my favorite line in the book comes at the very, close to the very end. And it says this, it says, for every American dream, there is a corresponding nightmare. And it took me like 80,000 words to work my way through the book to figure out, like, that's what this book is about. So I think that's when I get to all the chicken stuff, because I've had people, you know, I mean, this book pushes so many different buttons in so many different ways, and it's not really black or white. You know, I don't feel like it comes down too heavily on either side, and that was really the point. Those are my favorite. Everybody from Dostoevsky to Quentin Tarantino has said something along the lines of like, there's no real good guys or bad guys. You know, everybody's the hero of their own story. So when you're writing them, when you're creating them, you have to kind of show them that way.
I'll let, if anybody has a question, ask. But I do think what you just said is another reason why I think your writing is so important, because it's honest. You're just kind of putting it out there. Everybody's got a different situation. Everybody's got a different experience. Everybody's got a different motivation. And that's why it comes across so authentic. So thank you for doing that. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have a couple quick ones. Number one is, do they work the night shift in the book?
They do work the night shift. Yeah. Well, I guess not. No, I guess when the book starts, they don't. They have worked the night shift. Yeah.
The other question, with your writing process, is it with young kids? Do you have like a set time?
Oh man. So
these
these are my favorite. I'm a process nerd. I'm a craft nerd, and I do this column for Crime Reads called Shop Talk, which I get to interview, you know, all my favorite authors and ask them how they do it. Like, how do you put the black on the white? You know, how do you organize your life to do this? And this comes, I think, from my football background, because like when I was coaching or whatever, you would always call up other coaches and you'd talk shop. You know, you'd say, how are you running your kickoff coverage? How are you doing this? But here's how I do it. Yeah, my kids are young, and this new gig at the university is really open. I mean, going from teaching 7 classes a day, 5 days a week at a public school, to teaching, you know, a couple of creative writing classes at the university, it's a whole different thing, but I still stick to this routine. I get up at about 4:50, and what I do is I get to the office and start writing at about 5. I don't set an alarm or anything like that, because I'm down in the basement, and when my kids, like, when you hear, you know, like, that's it, you know, like, time is up, and I might squeak out a little more, but it usually ends up being about 2 hours. I mean, they get up about 7. And so I write all of that longhand, and I am an Elmore Leonard fanboy 10,000. So I've read all 42 of Elmore Leonard novels, everything from the Westerns to everything. And my wife gives me so much crap because I don't read a lot of current stuff. I get asked to do blurbs and things like that, and I'll be reading them, and I'll go through them, or she'll read a book that she just loves, and I'll try it. But I don't know. There's something that I'll make it so at some point, and then like she'll we read a lot in bed. We don't watch a lot of TV. We just go get in bed, and once the kids go down, and we read. That's kind of how we spend our nights. And she'll look over, and I'll have another like a same Elmore Leonard novel I've read like 12 times. She's like, Eli, seriously? So I don't know why I love him so much, but this is part of my craft thing because he wrote on unlined yellow legal pads. So I write on unlined yellow legal pads, which another Ray Bradbury thing, he said that in the epigraph of Fahrenheit 451, he said that if they give you lined paper, turn it sideways and write against the lines. So there's something about not having lines on the pad at all. So that's all really nerdy and really deep, but really deep into the thing. But I usually get about 1,000 words. And then what I do is I spend the rest of my day answering emails or making calls or teaching classes or doing errands. And I type that handwritten stuff into the computer in the cracks of that day. So by the end of the night, by the time my parents go to bed, or by the time my kids go to bed, my parents they're also on the 3rd floor. No, I'm joking. By the time my kids go to bed, I have whatever I got, building into the manuscript. And here's my real secret sauce. The kids are asleep. I'm back in the basement, and I call my mom. And so here's why I call my mom, is because I read aloud to her that 1,000 words that I've written that day. So reading aloud is really powerful, just to hear edits and hear your things. And I don't plot anything out. I don't ever outline anything. I just go. And that also helps because as I read it out loud, and especially late at night, I kind of think like, oh, here's what might could happen in the morning. But here's the real secret sauce. This is why calling mom will never stop. Is because mom never says, Eli, I think Gabby should do this. Or, Eli, no, I think maybe you should try this. She never does. She never offers any critique. She never offers. All she says every night is, Eli, honey, that was the best thing I've ever heard you write, ever. I mean, every night. And so I say, thanks, Mom. And I hang up the phone, go into bed feeling like, that's the best thing I've ever. And then I wake up at 4:50 and I'm just right back out again. So that's the whole process, from the pad to mom.
I love that. That's so good.
Anybody else?
Do you have trouble cutting yourself off?
What do you mean?
Like when you say you break for 2 hours and then your kids get up.
Yeah.
How do you stop yourself?
Oh man. So it gets really bad at the end of a book. And my wife has a term, and I think she actually got this from Harlan. Everywhere we used to drive, I used to listen to like writer interview podcasts, or like trying to do like shop talks. I was listening for their process. I was listening for ways to get better at like maximizing. So anyway, we were listening to a Harlan Coben interview, and he said something, he called it banana mode. And so what my wife has called banana mode is when I enter that last stretch of a book, it's like I'm so deep into this dream world, this fictional world that I've created, that I don't see the world. So she calls it banana mode because she's like, you just need to stay in the office and I will throw you a banana until like you are done with this. And this is how bad it has gotten. In the last book that I was finishing, we had one of my parts of this new gig at the university is we get to bring an author. So we've brought Juliet Grames, and then we brought Ramona Emerson, both to our little school in Arkansas, both Soho editor, Soho author. But I was it was bad timing because I was at the very last stages of this last book. And I was rushing out of our garage to go get to the school to get things set up for Ramona's talk. And I backed straight into her rental car. I mean, T-boned it with my truck, just like full on. And this happened, and then less than 48 hours later, my wife, we had brought her first like brand new vehicle, and it was like 2 weeks old. This like Mazda SUV thing. And I'm pulling in just to check the mail, which I've done 1,000,000 times. And we have this big stone mailbox, and I mean, from the left headlight to the side mirror. I just drug it down, and this was all within 48. And she was like, Eli, you're not when you're in banana mode, you are not allowed to write anymore. So it definitely, to answer your question, it definitely goes in waves. You know, like it starts off and you're trying to build that world and get into that world, and it's really easy to like be like, oh, I'm done for the day. Like I don't know what's happening. I don't know where it's going. The more you build and the deeper you get into it, the harder it is to kind of cut it off.
You take notes if something comes to you like in the middle of the
I definitely
afternoon,
do.
and it's like,
I love
oh,
that.
you know.
I try to stay away from screens as much as possible, but that is one thing that I use my phone for, because I have the notes app on my phone. And so, and there's that, you know, that we all know that time period, like right when you close your eyes to go to sleep, and how your brain can run to all the things you have to do. And you have, for me as like as a creative and a writer, it's almost like that time is invaluable, you know, because it's like the subconscious will connect the dots of the things that you were working all day to try. So I'll roll over and type it. And then here's the really dumb part though, is by the time I look again in the morning, it like don't make any sense. You know, like, or like maybe it barely ever makes sense. So.
All right, I have one more question. All right, we'll end on this question because this is a good question to ask, especially because of what you do with the column that you do. Who are some of your favorite writers, and who do you feel the most comfortable recommending to anybody? Because there's only a couple authors that work for a lot of people.
Yeah. Elmore Leonard. No, I've already said yeah. So this is the funny thing is I was in English. I studied and majored in English literature, and in the South, I mean, it was like I cut my teeth on like Southern literature, and starting with I guess Faulkner, Flannery O'Connor, to then like the Gritlit guys like Larry Brown and Harry Crews, and then on into like Jesmond Ward, and I mean just Southern literature was like what I was reading. All the way up until like I wrote Don't Know Tough. That's what I was reading. I was not a genre reader at all. Like I didn't read mysteries, I didn't read crime, I didn't read thriller. I read sci-fi and stuff like growing up. Like I was a big Ray Bradbury fan of Dandelion Wine, Martian Chronicles, like all these things. But it wasn't until, and the only reason I submitted my book to Soho Crime for that thing was because a great dear friend of mine and fellow author named William Boyle, he was the one who said, hey bro, he had read Don't Know Tough. He was like, I think maybe this is a crime novel. Like try Soho Crime. Because I was thinking, you know, it was more like this Southern literature, like this. And so when that happened, I was like, all right, I need to get caught up on crime, like on thriller, on suspense, and whatever, all these things. So Elmore Leonard is who hooked me right off the bat, and I've stayed with. I also really love Carl Hiaasen, who's in that same kind of vein, but a little more satirical, a little like funnier. Yeah. Things I've read recently that I really, really love. There's this really strange book called The Great State of West Florida, and it's by Kent Wascom. Has anybody heard of this? It's a pink cover. It's from Grove. And it came out like at the exact same time. We go to Pensacola Beach every year. And The Great State of West Florida is this book about like post-Second Civil War. And the panhandle of Florida has broken away from the rest of Florida. And so it's set in like all these dilapidated like Alvin Islands and like all this like beach rundown. But it's this weird kind of dystopian thing. Anyway, it's really great. I'm reading William Boyle's The Saint of the Narrow Street, which comes out from Soho in like, I think like February.
Yeah.
And it is, Bill Boyle is, I mean,
Yeah.
if you've never read A Friend is a Gift You Give Yourself, it is one of my favorite contemporary crime novels of all time.
Yeah. Oh,
Do you know
because
this one?
I do. Yes, I do. Yeah.
The premise is these two in their 70s former adult film stars, like back from the day. They're like older ladies now. One of them accidentally kills a mob boss, and they both go on the run, like across the country. and it is the funniest, most heartfelt, like, and Bill is from Brooklyn and lives in Oxford, Mississippi, which is, you know, how I'm Oxford's just a couple hours from where I am. It's great.
And you know what? I lied. I have one more question because this is something I've always wanted to ask somebody from Arkansas. What sports teams do people in Arkansas root for?
Yeah, so Arkansas has no professional sports teams. We have one major university, the University of Arkansas Razorbacks, which that's like our pro everything. I mean, that's all anybody does, you know, that's all we do. So we are in the SEC. So when it comes to football, that's a big deal to us because it's like they think it's the best conference and all that stuff. And I will say, he was asking what is next, so and it ties into this. Yeah, I do have a book that's gonna be turned in for 2025, and it's called Mississippi Blue 42, and it is a completely different thing than any of my other stuff because it takes on big money college football in the South. So it takes on the whole kind of world of all that stuff. And it is very different. So if Broiler is different than Don't Know Tough or Ozark Dogs, in between those, or if I said like I had those books finished all the way back to whenever, this is the one book I've been working on like this whole time because it's such a big idea. There's so much like you have to do with the money and how to figure out. So anyway, yeah, August of 2025, Mississippi Blue 42. My Elmore Leonard, Carl Hyacin-esque take. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Do you have any say on like the title of the book and the book cover? And the reason why I ask is the first book, when I first saw the gal, that's what drew me at the trade
Was
show.
the
When I saw the cover.
Field
Don't
goal
Know Tough.
post
Oh,
and
yeah.
the yeah.
You know,
So Don't Know Tough was, like I said, was a short story, and there's a line in that opening page that says that boy Poser, he don't know nothing, he don't know tough. And when I wrote that line, he don't know tough, it was like I saw those three words, don't know tough, and I thought, that's the title. And I mean, all the way back, that was always the title. Never changed, nobody ever questioned it.
okay.
The second book, and yes, the cover, oh my God,
Yeah.
because it was such a hard cover to get right. Like, you can't put like a high school football player like striking the Heisman pose on this cover because it's not like a YA book. It's not a teen book. And that was where we went originally. So that was and that is the beautiful thing about Soho. Is Soho's kind of this perfectly sized publisher because they're not so big that I can't say something and they won't listen, you know. And so we went back and forth, and that was it. The second book had 1 million titles. It was Salvation. It was Junkyard Dogs. It was Some Die Crushed. It was all these things. And then they started throwing titles at me. And we eventually ended on Ozark Dogs. I think because of the very popular Netflix series, Ozark. You know, like it was, I think that was the final thing that pushed them over. And then Broiler was always Broiler. I had the title to Broiler before I ever had the book. You know, before I ever had any words written. I will say the cover they originally sent for Broiler, and Soho they would own up to this. It was so bad. It looked like some idyllic like New England farmscape or something. You know, like they had obviously never seen a chicken house in Arkansas because those things are horrendous, and you wouldn't want that on the cover of a book anyway. So we ended up settling on this very simple image of just the feather with a little bit of blood.
It's interesting how much conversation does go into book covers. And sometimes they're right immediately, and sometimes it takes a really long time to get it right. And I do think they have done a really good job with yours. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like down the road, you're like, oh, it should have been this. You know, so I don't know. But they've gotten them right. They've done a great job. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so
It was so
much,
fun.
man.
We're looking forward to your next book, and we thank you for writing all the stuff you have, and we love that you have this constant need to keep writing thousands of words a day, and we hope it continues.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.